I hope you'll sing with me. I see trees of green, red roses bloom. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed day and dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. All the colors of the rainbow are so pretty in the sky, and also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow, and learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. We'll hear a little instrumental now. It's wonderful for all of us to be together in this beautiful world. Come sing with me some more. The colors of the rainbow are so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of the people going by. I see friends shaking hands saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow, and learn so much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful
Love. A few summers back, Judy, who's my partner and is working the PowerPoint this morning, and I were invited to go to Micronesia. And there we were told to go out to a particular beach that was absolutely beautiful. Well, a couple of summers later, some friends of ours went there, and we told them to be sure and go to Lara on the island of Majuro. And they came back and said it's no longer there because as the seas rise, what bit of land our island peoples inhabit dwindles, and fresh water is almost impossible. And back in 8 years ago, on PBS, I heard the ambassador from the little archipelago group of islands called Tuvalu. I heard him say that they'd raise enough money to send him to the United Nations for a year in hopes that the UN and the rest of us would get on board with slowing down, at least, global warming. Well, as the years have gone by, we discover that, like Majuro, Tuvalu is in deep trouble. And this song is called simply Tuvalu, and their motto is Tuvalu Mo Te Atua, which means 8 islands standing together, but they're not standing for long.
Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die.
Let's stay on that slide and sing it together now. Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do. Blue lagoon and coral sand mark the beauty of your land, but ice is melting far away and the sea is rising in the bay. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do. Cyclones blowing to your grief, coral dying on the reef, fish no longer come in swarms as the ocean water warms.
Some still fight with tanks and guns, but a new war has begun. This is how the world attacks, with car exhaust and chimney stacks.
Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do.
Hear the island people sing, join us in more gentle ways. Treat our life with precious worth, live more simply on the earth.
Atolls lie, flood as rising seas, swamp your homes and breadfruit trees. Time to leave, you cannot stay. Where to go, you cannot say. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by one more time. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, tiny islands in the ocean blue. Tuvalu, Tuvalu, you live or die by what we do. A sad song, but we're here to do what we can. In the Quaker songbook titled Rise Again, Pete Seeger writes in the introduction, "Why is singing good for the planet? Nobody can put it into words. But if there is a human race here in 100 years, my guess is that one of the main reasons will be we find ways we can sing together." Where have all the green fields gone? Thank you, Pete, for getting us going. Where have all the green fields gone? Long time passing. Where have all us now. Where have all the forests gone? Long time passing. Where have all the forests gone? Long time ago. Where have all the forests gone? Burned and blighted everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn?
Where have all the oceans gone? Long time passing. Where have all the oceans gone? Long time ago. Where have all the oceans gone? Fought and fished out everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn?
Where have all the clear skies gone? Long time passing. Where have all the clear skies gone? Long time ago. Where have all the clear skies gone? Polluted, poisoned everyone. When will we ever learn? Where have we ever learned? Where has all earth's wisdom gone? Long time passing. Where has all earth's wisdom gone? Long time ago. Where has all earth's wisdom gone? Seek it now to carry on. So may we ever learn. So may we ever learn. Well, Tuvalu was written like 7 or 8 years ago. And so is this one called The Time Is Now. And apparently the time wasn't now because we didn't get our act together. So now is the time to do what we can, as Bill McKibben was telling us last night. So let's sing The Time Is Now and realize it's our turn. Hear the sound of glaciers cracking, falling to the warming sea. Feel the temperature arising, no more time for compromising. Endless data analyzing, what more do we need? The time is now, the day is here. The earth cries out, the choice is clear. The time for change, no wonder all. Creation grows, Creator calls. See the species fast declining, lost forever to our greed. No time left for temporizing, softly sentimentalizing. Time for holy organizing to put into deed. The time is now, the day is here. The earth cries out,
need to wake up. We need to wake up. We need to wise up. We need to open up our eyes and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now. We're on a planet that has a problem. We got to solve it, get involved, and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now. Make it greener, make it cleaner, make it fast, and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now. No point in waiting or hesitating. We must get quiet, take more lives, and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now. We need to wake up, we need to wise up, we need to open up our eyes and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now.
Good morning, everyone. Let's give the Pilgrim Pickers a round of applause for waking us up this morning. My name is Rebecca Parker. I am a grateful student of John Cobb's and convener at this conference of the track Reclaiming Love for Paradise, Here and Now, and Emerita President of Star King School for the Ministry at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. It's my honor to be the MC for our morning session. Greetings of peace to all here, and a special warm welcome to those of you who have joined this morning. Last evening's opening celebration and address by Bill McKibben grounded us in why we are all here. We are here to bring our best thinking, feeling, wisdom, and energy to build an ecological civilization. In this urgent and critical time, let us dedicate this day to deepening our resolve. And may the water of our tears for all that has already been lost clear our eyes to see more fully what we need to do now to love life fiercely and defend it against all odds. May the good company of one another today and the blessings of the earth itself strengthen us for the task to which we have given our hearts. To begin this morning, we honor the life-saving power of the arts. Please welcome to the podium Pat Patterson, Poet Laureate of Seizing an Alternative. Pat.
It's a privilege as a poet activist to be involved in this tremendous rallying of people concerned about the environment. I'm reading two of my poems from my latest book, Awakening to Ecological Civilization. Awakening. Sometimes isolated in our brain, imprisoned in our mind, alienated in our own self-consciousness, we forget that we are made up of incalculable number of cells and trillions of bacteria. We lose track of the fact that we are shaped by invisible forces, that we are colonized in order to exist. We pay little attention to fellow creatures sharing this planet, burgeoning populations, beings of incredible variety. We do not remember our common origin and singular ancestry. We live as if we are an island, as if we are sole inhabitant, as if the evolution of life ended in us and bestowed on us and our kind domination of all the miracle life that dwells in and around us. When we wake up, when we join the rest of creation, we are overwhelmed with wonder. We are filled with insatiable curiosity. We are driven to our knees over and over again in face of teeming life, its variety and beauty, its uncountable, awe-inspiring, minute and mammoth forms, plants, animals, microbes sharing our living space. This is the part of the sacred that we have not acknowledged in our limited religion, in our egotistical spirituality. Now is time to repent, to become fellow creatures with ant, bee, elephant, deer, cedar, sequoia, spruce, oak, mitochondria. To live in this world as one among the multitudinous many. To lose ourselves in the fullness that we are a part of. To gain ourselves in being members of the family, one strand in this amazing web, this interrelated whole, this life-blessed earth. Thank you. One more. Manifesto. There is a life force, no matter how threatened it may be, no matter how muted or dimmed down by toxic days and terrible months of war, disease, and death. Everything has an insatiable thirst for creativity and joy, for union with universal wholeness, joining a symphony of creatures, all crying out as one. We live, we exist, we celebrate. Moving in a dance of defiance against the dark forces that claim we do not matter, working to divide or obliterate us, we affirm the vital strain that is our creaturely DNA. We will not let this earth be destroyed or desecrated, no matter how powerful the foes. Made to survive, to thrive, to breathe as one in harmony, we sing this manifesto of life.
Thank you so much, Pat. May we indeed dance the dance of defiance. Dr. Roland Faber will now come to bring greetings from the Center for Process Studies. Dr. Faber is the executive co-director of the center and also the executive director of the Whitehead Research Project and the Kilsby Family John B. Cobb Professor of Process Studies at Claremont School of Theology and Professor of Religion at Claremont Graduate University. A musical composer of great accomplishment and imagination, as well as a highly productive and creative scholar. His recent books include The Divine Manifold and Theopoetic Folds, Philosophizing Multifariousness. He works at the intersections of process thought, eco-theology, theopoetics, post-structuralism, post-colonialism, and interreligious discourse to lift up the liberating necessity of multiplicity and diversity. Monsanto, beware. Dr. Faber.
Good morning. I'm in a kind of a dilemma because I was only introduced to welcome you. And basically you have been welcomed yesterday, very welcomed, and Marjorie Sukhoki did a great job. So I can only repeat the welcome, and the question was, what could I say differently? So I thought about that, and one element would be I could add another language to the ones used yesterday. So möchte ich Sie alle herzlich willkommen heißen im Namen des Centers für Prozessstudien and the IPN, and I think you don't need a translation, I guess that you got that. So welcome. Another point that I can make is that this would not have been possible without the help of many people that worked with the center and at the center to make this a great event. And I want to give them a hand, please. Now, this is the 10th International Whitehead Conference, and some might remember in this series there has been another one here at Claremont. It was the year 1998. So just for a short test, who has been here at this time? Can you raise your hands? Wow, that's actually a new generation was raised in the meantime, it seems. And you have made it in a new century, the ones who have been there. I've been there, was my first one, and I made lasting friendships after this conference. I think another element would be to thank collectively the first generation of the Center for Process Studies, the members that created that center, without which I guess we would not be here in a sense. So let me also thank them. And then obviously there's John Cobb, and what can I say? The only thing I want to say is a secret. The really intimate friends of John Cobb call him John B. Cobb Jr. And John Cobb has tirelessly worked over many years for this conference, and he had a vision. And if you don't know about his vision, you will hear in a few minutes about it. But it's world embracing, and it asks us all to work for a different society, a different civilization of the future. And in this sense, I hope that this conference will be a success, but success, I think, for John Cobb will be not measured by the event, but that this event would be the beginning of a process by which we contribute to this vision and its realization. So in this sense, welcome.
Thank you. As Dr. Faber said, we have gathered here at this conference because of the persistent, faithful, humble, and brilliant life work of John Cobb. John, please consider our presence here and the work that we will pledge to carry forward as your Lifetime Achievement Award. We will hear from John this morning, and here to introduce him is his beloved friend, Dr. Ignacio Castuera. Ignacio embodies the integration of a scholar's mind, a pastor's compassionate heart, a preacher's inspiring fire, and a prophet's energy and courage. He is Claremont Theological School's 2015 Alumni of the Year. A leader in United Methodism, Ignacio has been out front on every single social justice issue for the last 50 years. Ignacio, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness.
Gracias. Buenos dias, Claremont! This has been too quiet, folks. Come on, what's going on? Is there anybody? Hey, there we go. Buenos dias. I'll be very short. You can see my notes over here. So, I'm supposed to introduce John Cobb, but he has been introduced so much and so much and so much. I'm not going to add to the sycophantic symphony, you know. So first of all, I want to recognize the passing of the mantle. Mickey Mantle is that, you know. So anyway, the passing of the mantle already passed, and I just get the rags, you know. So, but I have to do something, John, with your permission, or even without it. Last night, I was fully expecting David Griffin to be at our home so I could present him with the award that, the Common Good Award that the International Process Network gave him in Krakow. And they gave it to me to present it to him. And I told him I would do it before the next meeting of IPN. The next meeting of IPN, thank God, is on Sunday. So you don't have to come up, I'll take it to you. We all know why you didn't make it to Krakow. You know, you had a false flag operation done on you. Ha, ha, ha. False flag operation done on him. Okay, anyway, so you'll pick it up later. John and I get along very well. We're both Southerners. He's from, you know, southern Japan, Kobe, of Southern Parenthood, Georgia, and I'm from southern Mexico, Puebla. And his parents were white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. My dad was a brown Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And I rebelled against those values, and that's why I'm so undisciplined, indisciplinado, my father used to call me. And so, you know, that's why we ended up being a little different, even though we are so much alike. But I discovered that, you know, John also has it's not a dark side, but it is a gray side. And I just discovered it last week. I called them to say, John, I have been assigned to Little Bridges. Do you think that we're going to have enough people at Little Bridges? We have to pump it up. What about putting an ad or something that says that the section, I wasn't selfish, I just didn't want it only for myself, of course not, that all of the section plenaries will be free. Silence. I don't like last-minute changes. What? A Whiteheadian that doesn't like what last-minute changes? Isn't it every 10th of a second that God is acting? What happened? Well, it's not really a philosophical problem. It is an ethical problem. Ethical problem? Why? Well, there'll be a lot of people there who paid full fare, and they will say, "Wah, wah, 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 wah. Some people are going to come in free now when we pay. Wah, 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 wah." Well, he didn't put it quite that way. It's my Mexican translation of his southern expressions. I think he said something in Japanese like the equivalent of over my dead body. So when I started sort of weeping, he said, "Nakanai de, don't cry." No, not really. Then I went on to say, well, there's no ethical problem. Most of the people that will be there, would be ethical themselves, and they would know that, we should open it up to everybody. They probably know the story in the Bible about the people who came to work at the very end and were paid the full day. Silence. And then he cheated. "You are not going to persuade me." He used process language. "You're not going to persuade me," and hung up on me. Cliff and Ted were right. The final argument was, "I'm your father." And the final argument against me was, "I am your Dr. Vater." I love John Cobb. I stayed awake a lot of the night just trying to think, what am I going to do? And I decided to land on a couple of just two serious things. I can't remember now who said it, but institutions are the lengthening shadow of a person. Well, it's kind of a multiple personality lengthening shadows, Center for Process Studies. Pando Populus, now the most recent institution that will become a lengthening shadow of John Cobb, the Institute for the Postmodern Development of China, on and on and on. And if I live long enough, there would be at least a dozen centers for process studies in Latin America, in Spain, and other places where Spanish is spoken. And finally, not only Ted, Cliff, and the twins are his children, we're all his children. If you read why he has this conference, it's because he's worried about his children, his children's children, and his children's children's children, which means he's worried about my children's children's children. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I want to share with you one of the most recent children of John Cobb. Thank you very much. My Dr. Vater, my friend, my teacher. Please all stand and welcome Dr. John Cobb to the podium.
I'm almost speechless. That's rare. Usually I can have something to say. I could spend my time defending myself against the accusations of Ignacio. But I hope he's warmed up the audience so that I can start out by telling you the one thing I'm most worried about. I have never before spoken at any great length to people I cannot see. I think I'm gradually adjusting so that I can tell there is somebody out there. And maybe if you laugh at when I don't mean a joke, but it sounds like one anyway, that will reassure me that you are here. Several times it's been mentioned that there are many people who have contributed and are now contributing, and I'm speaking right now chiefly about some of them and what we are trying to do right here at this conference. And then the last person I will mention and introduce is Eugene Shirley, who will be talking to you about Pandopopulus. And after that, I will make a talk that is about the assumptions and the goals of the conference. So I'm going to ask you, as I mention a number of people who are especially important, some are on the platform, others are not, that you withhold your applause until I have talked about all of them, and then give me one good round of applause for so many contributions to this event. Now, there has been a little group of us, actually 4 of us most of the time, who have met week after week to try to figure out what to do next and what new crises to create and then try to resolve. We're good at that. And I do want to introduce them first, and one of them you've just been listening to, and you can imagine what a problem he has been. But we are very indebted to Ignacio. A second one is Vern Weissig, and he is out there trying to resolve a crisis right now, I think. If he's in this room, I express my apologies, but I hope he's getting the crisis worked out. But you will meet him tomorrow morning. He has a major role on tomorrow morning's program. The other one is Andrew Schwartz, who is the student leader and organizer and the actual head of the Center for Process Studies. And we started out thinking that he would just be helping us around the edges. But it turned out the edges took up most of our time and effort. And Andrew has been corresponding with many of you. The website that you registered on is his creation. The whole registration process is his. He has played so many roles that I've hardly been able to believe one person could do it all. If you are looking for a superhuman organizer, I recommend Andrew Schwartz. Now, he is not here. He came and was ready to come out and make some announcements, but since we want to announce about the solutions to some of the crises right now going on, we decided that might be better after they had been resolved, and he's out there resolving them. But you will benefit from his work, and he will appear on this later on, and when he does, by all means, give him some applause, but I'd rather he'd hear it. We have also been extremely closely related to, working with, supported by Mei Jun Fan and Zhe Hewang. You've heard several times about the remarkable work in China that they have been doing. The fact that through them, process thought has made serious inroads in China. China is the one country in the world where universities like to create a center for process studies because that gives them prestige. I can assure you, the US is not like that. But this is all because of them. Now, you will be introduced to them more fully and properly on Saturday evening. The Saturday evening program will be our China program as well as our IPDC program. So again, I'm just mentioning them now, and you will meet them and greet them at a later point in this succession of events. Now, our whole conference is organized around what we're calling tracks. And the word track is not immediately communicative. I'm not sure we chose the right term, but I like the idea that tracks are usually going somewhere. And that means that being on a track is not going to end just because the conference ends. We are oriented to the future. If this conference cannot make a contribution to advancing the causes that we were hearing about last night, it's not worth having. I think that we are deeply indebted to Bill McKibben, not just for coming last night in spite of all kinds of problems, but also for giving national leadership and perhaps global leadership in postponing the calamities that we are still headed toward. I'm hoping that in this conference we can spend our time not primarily talking about the calamities, but talking about a vision of what could happen. We are moved, I think, as much by carrots as by sticks, perhaps more. And the idea of an ecological civilization is a beautiful idea. And many of us are working in all kinds of ways to move society away from its plunge toward disaster to moving toward an ecological civilization. And I hope that this conference will help us to support the immediate actions which must be taken yesterday if we are to have a golden future or any future at all. But we will put the emphasis upon that. Now, in spite of that fact, and in spite of the fact that we want to be a hopeful conference and not one that wallows in despair, and certainly Bill himself is able to create that kind of a climate and an attitude, we also know that it is important deeply to internalize the probable history that lies before us unless we can get our act together. And we also know that that can be a deeply disturbing experience, even for people who have already known the facts. And we've had several people here in Claremont who have volunteered to meet with any of you who find the deepening realization of the terrible dangers that actually do threaten us, and who need to talk about it, about what that means to them personally and existentially. So if you are yourself experiencing that problem, plan to come to one of these early morning groups, and we will give you a little bit more information about that later. But I do want you to know that this is part of what some people will experience in the conference, and we don't want to be insensitive to the human need to share with others what happens to us as we come to this painful resolution. Well, we hope that all of the tracks will recognize that it is the future that we are working toward. And in many cases, you can be at least partly a workshop geared toward influencing the future, toward producing something that will be of importance in the future. And because we have that orientation, we want to assure you that if you decide you want to publish something in writing, articles or books, that we are set up to help you. Now, this is not at all to say if your track can produce a book that we want to have control over where you publish that book. Publish it where you can, the more widely the better. But if you need help in finding a publisher, we have created, or rather Janine Soletum has created a press. And she will be glad to talk to you about it, and I'd like to have Janine stand so you'll recognize her as she floats around during the conference. Yeah. And when you are in the bookstore, you can look and see the books that have already been published in this series, so you can see the company your book might have. We also have a journal, Process Studies, that would be interested in publishing. Dan Dombrowski was not able to be with us today, so I can't introduce him, but I want you to know who he is. He's done a wonderful job with that journal. But we know that the printed word is not the one that is dominating the present or the future. And so we have also created a website. And the website is called Pando Populus, and I will briefly tell you why, and then introduce Eugene Shirley to make a talk, and I think he's also going to show you some pictures of Pando Populus itself. Pando Populus means aspen. And we discovered what I had not known before, that although an aspen grove looks like a lot of independent trees, actually they all have one root system. And this image of living things bound together and supporting each other is an important image that I hope will replace the image that was very much in the minds of the 17th century thinkers who created the modern world. They liked the image of the clock on the cathedral at Strasbourg. Now, the reason for this is that it was a sign of what can be done mechanically, technologically. That the late Middle Ages were a time when technology developed very richly. And one of the major achievements was clocks, and not simply the fact that clocks could keep accurate time, but they liked to add to their clocks special events. And so every hour at the Cathedral of Strasbourg, figures appeared that looked like human beings, and they danced around the clock. And the wonderful thing for those early 17th century thinkers was this demonstrated that what look like they are living things are actually machines. And the whole of modern science is dedicated to the task of showing that what look like they are living and subjective and feeling beings are really completely explicable in terms of mechanics. And therefore, life does not exist as something distinct from the mechanical world. Now, I believe that when one denies the reality of life and studies living things as if they were not living, that one is likely not to prize and feel the preciousness of life and living things. And I believe we are now suffering greatly. So we prefer to think that a model might be of something living, but also something living that is not just like what it appears. Living things may look to us as if they were each independent of the other, but actually living things are all interdependent. We cannot survive alone. So an aspen grove is a great image of a life that seems to be multiple, but in fact also, in spite of its multiplicity, has a profound unity. Now there's one grove that is named Pando, and we have chosen Pando just as the people in the 17th century chose the Cathedral of Strasbourg, because this is the largest aspen grove. And it is probably the largest single organism in the world. And it is not only the largest, but it may also be the oldest. It's estimated to be 80,000 years. It suggests that when living things are really bound together in a rich and full way, they have the capacity to survive all kinds of challenges, all kinds of threats. But finally, it's a good image for the present, because although it has survived for 80,000 years through all kinds of climate change and other problems, today, the human intervention in the ecology is threatening the life of Pando. The most direct cause, I think, is that we have exterminated the predators of the deer. And whereas for thousands of years, this single root system has shot up many, many sprouts, and many of them have been eaten by deer. Now the only thing that controls or limits the deer population is starvation. And starving deer are not careless about leaving a few shoots to grow larger. And for several decades now, there have been no new trees. So when finally the old ones die, it will die too. Unless we change and we enable once again the natural systems to teach us rather than our thinking we can replace all the natural living systems with artificial. The website that is called Pandopopulous will take the materials from this conference, will hopefully make them accessible and interesting and share them very widely. And Eugene Shirley will tell you more about how you can become a part of this whole new development. It's already begun, but will have a new lease on life after this conference. Eugene, please come.
Thank you very much, John, and it's obviously just a great honor and privilege to be able to work with you and with the entire team that I've had the privilege of being able to work with so many of you out there. So Pandopopulous is a platform, and we like to say it's a place where big ideas come down to earth. And by big ideas, we mean philosophy in the sense, really the old-fashioned sense of wisdom and right action in the world. And by earth, we mean to include all the elements of a thriving ecosphere, including human. We're named, as John said, for the world's largest and oldest organism, this vast interconnected root system called Pando in southern Utah, kind of south central Utah. It's about 100 acres, a little more, and maybe as many as 80,000 years, possibly even more. And so, like the tree itself, we do like to focus on the root of things, and Pandopopulous is focusing, therefore, on the fundamental assumptions of culture, and that's how we distinguish ourselves from other organizations. Information is out there that could change the world. Excellent initiatives exist in isolation from each other so many times. Environmentalism apart from social justice, faith-based from secular and each other, businesses from NGOs, intellectuals from the street. And partial fixes are, of course, insufficient. Fundamental change requires integrated knowledge and action, but sufficient structures often don't exist to be able to address this kind of systemic change. So the opportunity then is to step into that kind of void and see what we can do. The great thing is the number of people who call themselves self-aware or who would identify themselves as earth-aware is strong and growing greatly. Americans identify, 88% of them identify as conscious consumers, 88% as socially responsible, 86% as environmentally friendly, and people may have a different, self-understanding than what maybe is appropriate or something. But nonetheless, the wonderful thing about those numbers is that at least people are actually wanting to see themselves that way. And so that's a great opportunity because there's a real groundswell. It's a groundswell that's probably new in Earth's history, I'd imagine, certainly not top down. So I think we can make the most of this opportunity then by bringing together the best of critical thinking for the planet, the people who aim to make a difference, and NGOs and businesses that know how to get the work done. So Pandopopulous then is a platform, as John said, for public intellectuals and civic engagement on behalf of the earth. We lay down the root system that's needed to support our own and also Pando's survival. We bring together the university, the community, NGOs and businesses for the planet. So as almost a couple of years ago now that a few of us went up to Half Moon Bay, just right south of San Francisco, to meet with a team of artists and designers who are based up there to talk about how to communicate big ideas that matter to a large audience. Vern Weissig, Ignacio, and I went up, and Tom Welch, who's probably out there somewhere and who's with us, we all were there, and Tom told us about Pando, the world's oldest and largest organism, not too far in Utah. And we thought it a very interesting and fitting symbol of the deeply ecological way of thinking that we all share. And so last fall, I visited Pando with a longtime filmmaking colleague, George Adams, first filmed with him in 1982. And we made a brief introduction that we thought we'd share with you today. It's just 2 or 3 minutes long, but it'll give you a look at Pando, and you'll see what it is we've been talking about. So that's Pando. If you are up for a 5-hour drive from here, you should go see it sometime soon. It's an amazing place. As John said, it's very much threatened by human activity. It's kind of the canary in the coal mine, I think, and so it's appropriate as a symbol for us in so many ways. And so Pando Populus then is a platform which will address some of the most fundamental questions that cause a great organism like Pando to be so threatened, and all of the rest of us as well. So what exactly does it mean to be a platform, or to lay down a root system like Pando from which then many trees and initiatives would be able to spring? So for one thing, it means to have the kind of technological foundation that's needed for an advanced learning system. Of course, we do have a website now, and that provides a portal then where people will be able to access information. But it's also very important for that website to develop more as a learning system so that people would be able to actually find the information they need when they need it on a wide variety of subjects. I mean, there are 80-some tracks and what have you. This is really, really fascinating, critical information, and you can't find this kind of aggregated information out there from the kinds of perspectives that we're talking about. And so it's very important for it to be very accessible to where people can find what they need when they need it, and the right kind of personalized learning environment to be able to support that. The second thing that it means in laying down the root system is to be able to gather the partners that are needed for people, content, and test case opportunities. So on the public intellectual, public scholarship side of things, we want to partner with colleges and universities, with institutions and think tanks, public intellectuals, artists and designers, to be able to bring their big ideas to life. We plan to partner with those involved in civic engagement on the activist and faith-based sides, and with NGOs and businesses. And the third thing that it means to lay down a root system is to network it properly and publicize it well. And that's where conferences and meetups are critical to us, traditional connecting, traditional forms of publicity, physical collateral, etc., and social media networking, blogging and posting and what have you. Given that we're based right here in Southern California, we've decided to make LA kind of the test case opportunity. This does not mean that we're just that we are limiting ourselves, of course, to Los Angeles or Southern California. It does mean that we have, let's say, test kitchens here in Los Angeles, in which we'd be able to take the content coming from the conference and continuing to stream in, hopefully from all of you, and be able to roll up our sleeves with very specific organizations here in Southern California and say, how can we be effective? How can we work with you to provide you the kinds of really rich learning materials and educational outreach products that you need? We think we can learn a great deal by being able to create laboratory environments throughout Southern California. I and the team can go meet with people physically, figure out how we can make this information effective, and then be able to do a broader outreach from there. And then, of course, we have strong plans for sustainability. We'll spend this year and next year building, planning, testing, etc. And then we look forward to very strong, aggressive growth then for 2017 and forward. As people who are intellectuals and civically engaged and who have come here, you, everyone out there, you're really our base. And so we are just really, really eager for your help. We have already been very fortunate to have received the help of many of you. John Cobb is our founding chairperson. Philip Clayton is the vice chair. We have an absolutely wonderful board. People like John McGuire, who's long been, or who was for 20 years almost president of Claremont Graduate University, has been a trusted friend and advisor on this. Betsy Hunter, you all will see her. She's out front now, and she's around. She's brought in, networks to probably 25 or so, or 40, maybe different organizations, environmental and others, locally and throughout the country. Sadie Collenberg has headed a team of managing editors that has been in touch with the track leaders and section leaders. Sadie's team is extremely important in being able to stay on top of the content that you all have been providing and will be providing going forward. Claudia Pierce on the publicity side has done an amazing job. She's gotten us about 100 traditional media and non-traditional media articles and posts and what have you just related here to the conference. Tim Burnett and Myra Shirley are running the whole social media enterprise, and we've gone from 0 social media impressions to now as of Wednesday, about 170,000. And that just gives, that's a real indication of what's so powerful about this, the symbol of Pando. It's easy to communicate what it's about. People feel they understand it, and it can deeply spread. Tim asked me to remind you, of course, to follow us on Twitter, to like us on Facebook. Both of those are certainly pandopopulist.com, or just Pandopopulist, and then our website, pandopopulist.com. If you want to tweet about what's going on at the conference and you know, some exciting ideas you're having or something that you hear, hashtag Pando is the way to do that. We grow out of the art and design community. George Adams, like I said, I worked with him first time in the Soviet Union in 1982, is heading up the whole video enterprise of what we're doing. Mariam Jabrani has been around with us around the world as well on various projects, and she's here. Mark O'Brien has done a great job on the website. John Bielenberg is the artistic director. John's a legend in the field of design. And Tucker Nichols has done the art. So if you see some art that looks a little funny and you enjoy, well, Tucker's the reason for that. And he was artist in residence at Facebook. They turned him loose at Facebook, said you can join any meeting you want, just kind of do whatever you want. And so now he's the artist in residence for us and has done really wonderful work. To take advantage of all of this output on the art and design team, we have a store with t-shirts like this and with posters and one of Tucker's books and what have you. And this is for the purpose of engaging people and kind of going out into the world and representing kind of some of the wonderful ideas that are coagulating here. So I hope that you will all consider yourselves Pandomaniacs, and that you will really see that you know, by Sunday night, this is not the end of the, or it is the end of the conference, but it's not the end of what you're doing here. I mean, everyone's collectively trying to rethink civilization from A to Z. And so we hope that you will continue to work with Pando in order to help us take that rethinking process forward and to bring together the public intellectual side of things with civic engagement on behalf of the Earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, I wanted to also do some more substantive talking with you, also about the conference, and just say very briefly what the assumptions are and how I hope the conference is going to move us forward in terms of the way I see the needs. I think one way of beginning is to say that the great opposition, the great enemy of taking seriously the proposals for many forms of action is TINA. There is no alternative. This is a phrase that has been used again and again, but it's not just the use of the phrase, but it's the kind of deep acceptance of it that so many people have. Yes, we think we've got to be some fundamental change. We can't go on this way, but actually, there's no way of avoiding it. We may think that there is a way of avoiding it on this particular issue or that particular issue, but overall, we're still swept along. And unless we can see that the changes on each specific issue require changes on all the issues, or rather on the roots that have given rise to all the issues, we don't have much chance. Let me give a few examples. I think it is wonderful that we still have whales on this planet. If there had not been a powerful movement of protest against the slaughter of the whales, I expect most species would be gone by now. This is to be credited to a few bold people who have really not only taught us about the rich experience of our mammal friends in the ocean, but have also acted in such ways as to force us to attend. It's a wonderful example of success. But the sad fact is that the whale population is now threatened by the destruction of its food supply, by all kinds of changes in ocean currents, by the acidification of the ocean. And saving the whales as an isolated act of protest and turns out, in the end, not to make much difference. Similar examples are abundant. I'll just take one now from the realm of humans. It's wonderful and took enormous amounts of work and heroism and huge support from many, many people to actually extend the franchise to ethnic minorities, especially to blacks. It's a wonderful achievement. I celebrate it completely. But now we know that voting has very little effect upon what happens in the world. Our Congress people have to act in the way that their financial supporters will support them, not paying that much attention to the ballot box, and the ballot box is largely controlled by the media, and the media are controlled. I don't need to go through all that. But to have gone to enormous efforts to get the vote just at the time that the vote was ceasing to have any effect upon, or any significant effect upon, public policy. I feel in many ways similar about the feminist movement. It has been wonderfully successful. One of its great successes is it has opened up the professions to women. But about the time that women can be professionals, professionals have ceased being professionals. Professionals are now hired workers just like everybody else. If we are going to make a breakthrough, it has to be at a deeper level. There have to be changes of another kind. Well, let me just very briefly say, I gave you the model that in the 17th century became the dominant model, or it was in the 18th century before it really became dominant, but it was formed in the 17th century. This is the idea that the world is fundamentally a mechanism. Mechanisms have no subjectivity. The big point of making the world a mechanism was to say, purpose is not an explanatory factor in what goes on in the world. Now, of course, it was especially in the sciences that these ideas caught on. And science is still the most prestigious part of our educational system, and very often, not always, but very often employed to determine public policy, not now when it conflicts with certain other things. But as long as we think the world really is a machine, it's very difficult to muster our energies to defend life. We see the world entirely objectively. We see the world as being what is presented to us, primarily in our sense experience and primarily in our vision. And we don't understand that the seeing is much more fundamental than what is seen. Well, there are alternatives. We do not have to live forever with a mechanistic model. We do not have to organize our educational system based on a mechanistic model. But we do have to change our philosophy if we're going to change the way we do any of these other things. Now, even if you agree to that, you might say, well, why in the world are we pushing Whitehead so hard? Why don't we just create a new philosophy? Well, let me very briefly sketch the history that leads me to my judgment that we frankly don't really have the time to get started and invent the wheel again. When you've got a good wheel, and you need it urgently, is the time to use it. Now, why do we need it, and why does it exist? Well, I've been describing to you the thought revolution of the 17th century, which reduced living things other than human beings to machines, and was so successful in advancing science and technology. It was challenged, however, when people discovered that human beings were part of nature. That meant, it seemed to mean, human beings were also machines. That was certainly not the assumptions of the 17th and 18th century, who thought human beings were very different from the machine. But Darwin said, no, human beings are part of nature, and he was right, of course, and the evidence is overwhelming. Well, now, common sense would respond to this by saying, all right, if we are part of nature, then nature cannot be simply a machine. And a good many people adopted that view in the late 19th century, and they created what we can call a new naturalism. A naturalism which included within nature all kinds of things that the earlier model had excluded. Now, that new naturalism for a generation was recognized very widely, and certainly in our liberal arts colleges, among other places, as making sense, as being a cutting edge of thought and so forth. People like William James in this country and Henri Bergson in Europe were respected figures. But the university was being organized into academic disciplines, and the academic disciplines were shaped according to the earlier model, the 17th century model. And this whole new naturalism was pushed out of the university, but it still resonates to a great many people in the wider culture. It's common sense. We all know we are not machines. And if we know we are not machines, why do we think that we should think that we are machines? I find the whole business of presenting the contemporary worldview as it dominates the university, the research university, rather comic. People get up and make strong arguments that this is the way we must study everything. And the implication is that they are just machines presenting what they are programmed to present. No one believes it. It's nonsense. But it rules the world. To be an expert is to be highly trained to think in this way, and to suppose that if you allow the idea that subjects, thinkers, feelers, emotionally creative people that any of this plays a role in what actually happens in the world, that is to be dismissed as fluff. You've only understood it when you have shown that it's physical, and physical is understood as material. We don't have to live that way, and we can recover the great thinkers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. But I haven't emphasized Bergson and James. Why? I want us to recover them. They're great. But if we are really going to make progress, we have to deal with physics as well as biology and psychology. And there was one brilliant physicist who developed the most elaborate and thoroughgoing, what he called philosophy of organism. He's done it. I don't think we have to do it again. That doesn't mean we don't have to think about 1,000 issues that are raised, and we don't have to learn from Bergson and James and 100 other people to enrich what he's done. But we can begin with that. And if we understand that there is a way of rigorous thinking, just as rigorous as anything done by the philosophy of mechanism, it's already available to us. This should encourage us to work together to undo the damage that has been done by the exclusion of this mode of thought from our centers of power and influence intellectually. In this conference, we have many different groups studying many individual topics and seeking to make advance. I think this is necessary. We have to specialize. None of us can do everything. But I hope that by being side by side, doing our thinking together, on Monday we will gather in smaller groups to discuss how what happens in one place is going to relate to what happens in others, and so forth and so on. But we have all of this that I believe we will be able to see as fundamentally complementary work in many different channels. And if all of us can recognize it is complementary work, and when people make progress in other areas than the one we specialize in, that we are making that progress. When people support, for example, the work of the agriculturalists, the ones who don't think the land is to be treated as inert, but rather recognize that soil is alive and it's the life of the soil that can save us and feed us. The people who understand that, if they know that all of us are behind them, and when they go to Washington and try to influence legislation, they will speak for all of us and not just for that little group of people who are working on that specialized topic. We can convert the multiple activities that are now going on, healthy activities, good activities, into a common movement. I don't know whether movement is the right word. Perhaps we should simply say network. But it's my hope that we can, through this conference, contribute to serious networking among hundreds of different people working in hundreds of different fields, so that there is an alternative can be profoundly recognized and appreciated, and we will not be cowed into thinking the only way we can go is the way we have been going, straight to hell.
Thank you, John. As E. Cummings said, to heaven with hell. Let us make this life, this world, reflect our love and defend it with every fiber of our being, as you have taught us. Thank you. Here now, as our final speaker this morning, is Dr. Mary Evelyn Tucker to speak of hopes for the future. Her support for this work and this conference has been tremendous, and we thank her. Dr. Tucker has inspired many of us by her message that the moment has arrived, she says, for an emerging Earth community, a deep time perspective that evokes beauty and awe along with compassion and responsibility for our shared planetary future. It is now in our hands, she says. Dr. Tucker is the co-director of the Forum for Religion and Ecology at Yale, where she works to bring the spiritual resources of the Earth's wisdom traditions to bear on behalf of the Earth. A specialist in Asian religions, her recent book, Religion and Ecology, co-authored with her husband, John Grimm, explores the history of religions in relationship to environmentalism. She is a lifelong eco-activist, a drafter of the Earth Charter, and building on the work of her mentor, Thomas Berry, she has authored and produced with others the Emmy Award-winning film Journey of the Universe, aired on PBS and now trending strongly on Netflix. Hooray. A prolific writer, beloved teacher, international activist, Please join me in welcoming her to speak to us now.
Thank you very much, especially John Cobb and all the team here. I'm going to try and just outline briefly some of the hopes for an ecological civilization. We know the obstacles all too well. And as we begin, this sense that ecological civilization requires new worldviews and ethics that are shaped by both religious traditions who are entering into their ecological phase. This is the work that hundreds of people have been working with us in the Forum on Religion and Ecology. In addition, it's absolutely clear we need an evolutionary narrative that's drawing on scientific discovery and humanistic insight. And that's why over 10 years, with Brian Swim and others, we did Journey of the Universe. The point here is we are facing an immense crisis. We know that. So how do we get from climate awareness to action? That's one of our big issues. The sense that we need to leverage change. The climate science is not communicating. Climate policy is deadlocked around the world, especially in the US. But we need then world religions and the larger sense of spirituality and ethics as values for change. They are critical at this moment. In addition, we need an integrating story that brings us together in terms of this emerging multicultural planetary civilization. Now, we know all too well the problems of religion. But I want to emphasize here the promise of religions. Large numbers of people, moral and institutional power and force. So here at this moment, there is the possibility of scaling up that moral imperative that Christiana Figueres spoke about 2 days ago in Bonn. Never before in the climate talks had moral imperative been used. That is what is happening at the moment. Because this religion and ecology is both a field in academia for education on every level, and it's a force in society now. Thanks to a book in 1972, Is It Too Late? By John Cobb, 40 years of work we're building on. Now, how did I get interested in this? Along with John Cobb, Japan changed my life. When I went there in 73, 74, here was Mount Fuji. And as we know, this is part of Japan today with Fukushima, one of its most incredibly sad moments in the industrial collapse. But I also went to China in 85, 10 years later, and China was beautiful. We have now one of the most polluted parts of the planet. The water, the air, the soil. And we're so glad to be working with the partners here from China and Zhehe and Meifeng and their excellent work. Well, why then did we do this work on world religions and ecology, a series of conferences at Harvard and 10 books over a period of 10 years with literally 800 scholars and activists? Because we said, as you two believe, the environmental crisis is a cultural one, it's a spiritual one, it's a moral one. But it requires then a different worldview from Asia, Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Jainism, the indigenous traditions. It won't just be through the lens of a Western religions or philosophy. So this work that's been ongoing was formed then into the Forum on Religion and Ecology in culminating conferences at the UN and at the Natural History Museum. 1,000 people came to both of these events. Bill Moyers interviewed people from the different world religions and so on. Then we brought it to Yale in 2006. Why Yale? Because Gus Beth, one of the great policy people in climate change, said our science and policy isn't working. We need the religions. So we started to work with research, education, and outreach to build on the conferences and seminars that we had already done, to encourage publications and bibliographies on the website. They're all annotated for this work. There's an MA program now at Yale between the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, the oldest environmental studies program in North America, and the Divinity School. But we also wanted to illustrate engaged projects on the ground. Like Eugene is suggesting here in Southern California, there's a renewal film, 8 grassroots religious environmentalisms across North America. We've worked with the Parliament of World Religions on this, and representatives are here, with UNEP, with the IUCN, International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and the Earth Charter, one of the most important global ethics we have to build on: ecology, justice, and peace. That's the heart of the Earth Charter. So the forum website has so much material that we hope you'll draw on, including science and ethics for climate change, educational resources, syllabi, a monthly newsletter that, again, we can partner with Pando on, but we'd be happy to highlight your events and your work as well. What John and I are beginning at Yale are online classes in world religions and ecology, and in these other areas moving towards Journey of the Universe and Thomas Berry. The field, then, that has been developing in religion and ecology became absolutely evident, as Bill McKibben said last night, in the climate march in September. 400,000 people. But you know, it was the first time that about 10,000 of those were religious leaders, laity, religious groups. Many of you were there, I'm sure. It was electrifying. There was a conference at Union. There was a huge celebration at the Cathedral St. John the Divine. Where are the moral, religious, spiritual voices on this? This was a watershed in the scaling up of religion, ecology, and ethics. Now, we're also at this moment where leaders are speaking out. We are about to have an encyclical from this Pope, but his friend and a co-evolutionary and ecologically minded person, the patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church, as you may know, has been speaking about ecological sin, crimes against creation, one of the most articulate people about the sacredness of the universe. And he's encouraged the Pope to do this encyclical. We also have Catherine Jeffers-Shorey, a scientist who's testified before Congress, the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church. Joel Hunter and others in the evangelical churches working together on this issue. The other world religions are clearly also scaling up. The Dalai Lama has been speaking about this for a long, long time. But just this semester at Yale, we had one of the young leaders, 29 years old. Thousands of Tibetan Buddhists in the Himalaya region listened to him, and he gave a talk on Buddhism and ecology. He has 55 monasteries that he's encouraging to move forward on climate action and uniting with other monasteries in the South Asian region. Du Wei Ming, one of my great mentors, along with Thomas Berry, a tremendous Confucian scholar who's helped this revival of Confucianism in China. And again, I thank our partners on this here. For the last several years, he's been having a conference at the Songyang Academy. This is a province of 90 million people. This is an academy that's 1,000 years old. The revival of Confucianism is for ecological civilization in China. The governor was there, all of the ministers. They're talking about a circular economy with no waste based on Confucian principles of interrelatedness that is very similar to Whitehead. So, education. The Jesuits, along with this Pope, are about to launch some of the most outstanding programs on science and values, bringing together the sense that science is teaching us about ecology and climate change, but we need the ethics and values for transformation. There are 28 universities in the US, 230 around the world, and many high schools as well. What they're about to do in the next year or so is launch an online textbook on all these major issues of the environment. It will be open source. So one of the largest educational projects around the world. Yes. Now, we're all awaiting the papal encyclical. June 16th, I believe, is the day. The first words are going to be, "Blessed be," from the Canticle of the Cosmos of St. Francis. An amazing moment. The content will be integral ecology, people and the planet together. The ethical challenges of climate change will be central. Environmental degradation, climate justice. The poor are clearly those most vulnerable around the world. And this is something the religious traditions can raise up because social justice and environmental justice has been part of their work. Now, the audience for Scaling Up is astounding. 1.2 billion Christians, Catholics, 2 billion Christians. But you know, the other religions are awaiting this. And the news has been on this since this was announced almost a year ago. The reporters, the scientists, the educators are awaiting this tsunami of change for moral awareness on climate change, environmental degradation, the poor, justice. This is the moment we have been awaiting. It is 2 weeks away. Blessed be. And you know, the Pope, he has long and short-term goals. Clearly, the climate talks in December is what he's aiming for, but he's making his first trip to the US, and as you know, he's going to speak in the Congress, which is amazing, a first. He's also going to speak at the UN, which is going to be astoundingly important. Now, I want to conclude this second part of my talk to say we need the religions, we need the ethics, but we also need a big story, a great story, an inspiring story, the inspiration for the perspiration of the great work, as Thomas Berry would say. And Teilhard, who would be the counterpart to Whitehead here, is an amazing inspiration for us in this work, as is Thomas Berry. There's a book from Yale that we have done, there's the film, the conversations as well, interviews with scientists and environmentalists. How are we inspired by this story to do the work of eco-cities, of ecological economics, of a new educational force? How does this matter for race? How does it matter for indigenous peoples? These are in the conversations. Now, here is a summary of, I think, what we're all trying to do here. Journey, the world's religions. Einstein says it so beautifully. A human being is part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Amen. I want to invite you to Journey of the Universe, which will be shown in Edmonds 101 in the first session. And thank you very, very much for this moment of grace that is with us here at this conference, but around the world for a multicultural, planetary civilization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. We are approaching the hour of adjournment, and Andrew Schwartz, the Managing Director of the Center for Process Studies, is here now to give us some announcements and give us the news on how the immediate crises, at least, have been resolved. Andrew.
Hi. Thank you very much. So, we've explored last night and this morning some of the key problems facing our civilization, and the question you might be asking yourself is, where do we go from here? Quite literally, that depends on where your section plenary is going to be. So, in case you're curious, if you haven't seen our programs at the registration table, these have locations and times for different events that are happening throughout the weekend. Our website is got under program, under schedule outline, detailed schedule, is the most up-to-date and accurate information. For additional printed updates, we have inserts for the program that are over at the registration desk as well. A few key announcements that people might want to know about. First, our 3 introductory classes have locations. So the Introduction to Whitehead's Thought class is going to be at Pitzer College in the Broad Center, room 208. The Introduction to Christian Process Theology class, which unfortunately Gary Dorian will not be able to join us for, but is still taking place over at Claremont Graduate University's Burkle building, room 16. And the third group, the workshop on Learning to Love, will be happening at the Broad Center, room 209 at Pitzer College. Those will take place at 2 o'clock today. More immediately are the section plenaries. That's the next thing that we're doing, following here at 11 o'clock. For those of you who want to know, I'll just go through the list real quick. Section 1 plenary with Catherine Keller is at Claremont Graduate University, Albrecht Auditorium. Section 2 plenary with Helmut Maassen will be at Benson Auditorium of Pitzer College. Section 3 plenary with Nancy Howell is at the Frank Blue Room of Pomona College. Section 4 plenary with Philip Clayton will be taking place in the chapel at the UCC Church across the street. The Section 5 plenary with Sandra Labarsky is going to be right here in Bridges Auditorium, and they will have a simultaneous translation provided. Section 6 plenary with Mary Elizabeth Moore will be at the sanctuary of the Claremont UCC across the street. Ignacio Castuera in Section 7 will be in Little Bridges Auditorium at Pomona. Section 8 with Franz Riffert is actually going to be held at Claremont School of Theology Haddon Hall over in the Butler Building. John Sweeney with Section 9 will be in Thatcher Music Hall, Lyman at Pomona College. Section 10 with William Connolly, the Smith Campus Center, room 208. The Section 11 plenary with Luke Higgins is at Smith Campus Center, Rose Hill Theater. And finally, Section 12 with Marjorie Suhaki is in Hahn Hall, room 101. Great question. So, for the 5 groups that are meeting off Pomona College's campus, the 2 that are at the church, the one at CST, the one at CGU, and the one at Pitzer, we will have guides with wearing bright orange vests who will meet you on the north patio of Bridges, just following our time here, who will take you to your locations. They'll walk you over. For those who are going to the School of Theology with Section 8 with Franz Riffert, we'll actually have 3 vans, that will be shuttling people up across the street since it's a little bit of a walk. You're welcome to walk. We will have a group doing that as well. Enjoy the beautiful ecological, grandeur that is Claremont, California. But we do have 3 vans that we're running, and those will be meeting on the south side of Bridges. Other questions? All right, I think that about does it. Thank you very much.
Bravo, Andrew. Thank you. At the close of this, as you go out into the lobby, Dr. Cobb will be there and poet Pat Patterson to sign books if you'd like and to greet you. And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and the Pilgrim Pickers are going to lead us in song so we can go forth with our voices connected.
Come gather round people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accepted that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming, or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. workshops, and we're going to do one more, but you're invited to be heading out now. We're going to sing Take Off Your Shoes, which is based on the Western Hebrew Christian scripture, but as we're affirming in this conference the depth of the Spirit in all cultures, in the religions of the world, is what we're hoping to unite with as we make what difference we can. Take off your shoes, you're standing on holy ground. Take off your shoes, you're standing on holy ground. The earth is our God's and the fullness thereof, from the waters beneath to the heavens above. So take off your shoes, oh yeah, 'cause you're standing on my holy ground. You're standing on my holy ground. Slow it down just a tad, here we go. On the 8th day of creation, well, our God looked around at the power plants and freeways and the trash on the ground. Plantations growing rubber where the grain should be high. You couldn't see the sun for all the smog in the sky. Well, kids, you really filled the earth and then you subdued it. But there's nothing in my book that says you've got to pollute it. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. You're standing on my holy ground. You're heating up the planet with your greenhouse effect. You're killing off the oceans that you've got no respect for what your fluorocarbons do to air and sea and land. What part of global warming do you not understand? If oil is the commodity we're fighting for, it's time to learn the sanity that less is more. So run, take off your shoes. You're standing on holy ground. Take off your shoes. You're standing on holy ground. The earth is our God's and the fullness thereof, from the waters beneath to the heavens above. So take off your shoes, 'cause you're standing on my holy ground. You're standing on my holy ground. You're standing on my holy ground. And here's the gentleman I wrote this song for back in 1974, Dean Freudenberger. Okay, I think we better get off because we're running behind and they need to set up for the next act. Yeah, I think so. Thank you.